Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 15-minute Rev. This is Dr. Missy Wood. It's been a long time. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay today. Monday. And we're starting 2020 off with a bang, but I hope you're all doing very, very well. It's always good to see my peeps and get started into a new year. They said it's really going to be a doozy this year, so it's an election year. Let me fade that out so we can get going. But I want to welcome you to the 15-minute Rev today. I'm really super encouraged today because 2 weeks ago, the Lord had been talking to me about developing more unity in our families and bringing the family back in. Hey, BP, that is such a trip. It shows up on here, but it doesn't show up anywhere else. That is so funny. But anyway, the Lord's been talking to me about bringing our families out from underneath Jezebel and bringing our families out from underneath Leviathan and stuff like the last 2 weeks. And I thought I was just kind of pondering it and kind of, I don't know, hoping. I hate to say hoping, but I wanted to make sure I was hearing the Lord right. And today he confirmed it. And so I'm just super excited. I'm excited to see what God is doing for the new year. I've been talking to our team. If you haven't gotten the book, and I'll give these guys a plug because it's a really, really good book. And I think if you're a front runner, everybody needs this book, as well as A Time to Advance. You need to make sure you grab that book. You can get it. I'll help Dr. Pierce sell his books. I mean, why not? You reap what you sow, right? So help the man. God bless him. But you need that book. You definitely need that book if you're going to be doing front running this year. Hi, Ida. Good to see you guys. So you need that book. You need that book if you're going to be doing some front running. But I have got a rocking cool word today for you for the new year. And I'm super excited about what God is doing as far as our families go. It's been a long time coming, and God was working on us the last 30 years and trying to get us aligned and get our hearts aligned and rebuilding the temple, getting us into alignment with love and getting us into alignment with the Spirit. And now he's going after our families. And so that's what today's word's about. Also, I wanted to, before I jump into the word, just real quick, if you're going to be on Facebook this week, we're going to be doing this study. You're going to want to join us if you're interested in putting the God's law of first things and joining us for that study and putting God first in everything you do. I think that's important for where he's taking us as a family and as a body right now of believers. If we're going to be doing front running and we're going to be operating and trying to get into the glory and things like that, that's imperative. We want that to be in its place, and want God to have his rightful place on our hearts and on our thrones and stuff like that. So, and stuff like that. That sounds really professional. But I hope you guys had a good Christmas. I hope that you got everything your heart's desire, that you desired. Oh my gosh, y'all are coming up over here too. That is so weird. So I guess StreamYard changed its platform rules or whatever, because I can actually have comments on here. This is outstanding. I can see my peeps. I can see you. I can see you. You can run, but you can't hide. So let's jump into the word. And it's going to stoke you because it is such a good word today. But the title of it is called New Legacy, New Land, New Heart. Okay, New Legacy, New Land, New Heart. And actually he started off by saying New Legacy, New Land, New Heart Surgeons. He called us heart surgeons. He's calling us that. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. But he starts off in the book of Genesis 13:5 through Genesis 15:21. And it's talking about when God's bringing Abraham and us back into the new land. Hey, daughter of Zion, good to see you. Susan Self, happy New Year, man. It's great to see everybody. Hi, Yvonne, Carol Burkett. Where have you been? Claire, Judy, it's good to see all of you. Happy New Year. Yvonne, always good to see you guys. So happy New Year, everybody. But he's talking about, and that's the word for the new year too, God bringing us into our new land. All the prophets are saying it. You heard about from Marcus Rogers to Dr. Chuck Pierce to who is her name? Vinner Alston. And I want to say Dutch Sheets, Tim Sheets. And this is also a year where the Lord's telling the enemy, he's like, you're not going to bully my people. That's what he's telling them too. And so that's part of it. Coming into the new land, we're taking land back, and God's taking back people in our families that were held captive or taken captive by the enemy. And so a lot of us have been wanting peaceful households, and we want people around us to change, but God had to change us first, right? He always starts from the inside out. And then he starts moving outward. He starts going after people around us. And so that's where we're at. So God's bringing Abraham back into our land. He's bringing him back into his land. He's bringing us back into our land. And God is resetting a holy altar. Everything's about the altars right now. God's tearing down all unholy altars, evil altars, altars made with wrong motives or made from the enemy, where they tried to hold us captive. And then he's resetting holy altars. He's hitting his holy altar back in place. And so it's a valuable thing. When you've got your tent in position and the tent of the Lord is tabernacling over your tent, and then he's resetting your altar. It's a powerful thing. That means he's found a place to rest. And hopefully that's you, right? That's your heart. So we're going to start off, and it's talking about Lot. And Lot was a little wild Sahemian to me. He was just absolute wild Sahemian. He did his own thing. He was worldly. He kind of halfway did what he wanted to do, and he halfway did God's thing. He really wasn't loyal to the Lord. And this is a place right now I really feel like in the spirit where the Lord has been already all last year and the years prior, been testing our hearts to see our loyalty, our levels of loyalty to him, and through the testing periods. And were we going to be faithful when everything was taken away? Or were we in it just for what we get from his hand instead of what he wanted to give us from his heart? What were we in it for? What were our true motives? He's testing all the motives of the heart. And that's what he's been doing until he reached this new place that he's brought us into. So Lot, it speaks here, Lot, who went with Abram and had flocks and herds and tents. And now the land was not able to support them all so that they could dwell together, for their possessions were so great. Each man had their own possessions now, and they couldn't dwell together. This is what happened in our families, by the way. He's getting into that right off the bat. And so there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwelt in the land as well. So what does this mean for us? This is how I interpreted that. Right off the bat, the Holy Spirit started talking to me. He goes, this is a depiction of what's gone on in the church, between the tares and the wheat, as well as within your families, in people that were walking in the flesh and in religion, as opposed to walking in God's spirit of love. This is what God's talking about. He's comparing and contrasting here, I believe. And so he's describing Lot, the differences between Lot and Abraham and what caused the strife. And because both men had acquired wealth, the only difference was Lot had acquired also a taste of the world, whereas Abram was a peacemaker. He walked by faith, but he chose to dwell in the spirit. Okay, he was walking by faith and not by sight. And that's what religion causes us to do. We walk by sight instead of by faith, and we're in the flesh versus the spirit. Okay, God is a spirit, you're a spirit, and the devil's a spirit. Whichever spirit you give way to is the spirit that rules and reigns on your vessel. It's the spirit that builds altars, evil altars on your vessel. It's the spirit that, if it's you giving rule and reign to the devil or to an unhealed area of your life or to your bloodline, then those are the spirits that rule and reign, and they will tear down your house if you let them. That's why God's been cleaning us up the last year. He's been cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, so much to the fact that we're just wanting to regurgitate. We're so tired of deliverance ministry. But God bless the deliverance ministers, right? God bless us, everyone. God bless us, everyone. But anyhow, I'll stay on track. Okay, so Abraham was a peacemaker because he lived by faith, and he chose a heavenly city, where Lot was a troublemaker because he lived by sight, and he chose an earthly city. How many of us have been having some problems with people in our family and I don't want to go there because we don't want to beat them up. People are people. Everybody's got something they're dealing with. Everybody's trying to overcome something, right? So we're to love them through the stuff. So, but Lot lived by sight, and he chose an earthly city. He chose the things of the world. So God's people are always, when we're going through a time of testing and God's trying to depict the tares from the wheat, and he's trying to show us who the true sheep are versus the tares and things like that in our surroundings, whether it's in our church, in our families, what have you. And I hate to say in our families, but it is what it is, or in the world around us, in politics, or I don't even want to bring that into it, but it is what it is. We're seeing the vast separation, and it's becoming so apparent that people, it's just like you have to pinch yourself, because you have to make yourself think, well, am I really living in the time that I'm living in right now? I can't believe I'm actually seeing and experiencing what I'm seeing. So there was strife in their camp, And Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, as we're brothers. Is not the whole land before you. Please separate from me. And if you take the left, then I'll go to the right. And if you go to the right, then I'll go to the left. He's trying to make peace with him. He's trying to bring an end to any conflict that might have happened so he can be about his Father's business. Because that's what we're all called to do this hour. It's all hands on deck. God's got us trying to be about his business, to establish kingdom so that people can start getting free and stepping into their position in God's army. Okay? So this is where the test began. This is where the test began, because Abraham didn't know that he was being tested. A lot of you didn't even know that you had entered into a test 30 years ago. And some tests can take such a freaking long time to finish. And you just think to yourself, am I really living this out am I living hell on earth? Is this ever going to come to an end, kind of a thing? And dealing with the difficulties in relationships and the difficulties with people. And you literally, you have to get a grip on it and keep your focus to know that every test has an ending date. No test lasts forever. But if you have the wrong mindset when you're walking through a test, he'll extend it. He'll extend the end date. And it's like, I don't want that. So the trick to passing a test is to recognize it. That's the first trick. Recognizing it's not a trick, actually, it's a truth, but it's recognizing that you're even in a test. And then the second thing you need to be able to do is to be able to have the wisdom to go to God and saying, how do I pass this test? How do I make it up and over to where I can get it over and done with? I don't want to be walking in this thing for 40 years, and I don't want to be going around this mountain 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 times. You've got things to do, places to go, and people to see. And so did Abraham. But God's people, before he also takes them into a time of testing, or even after the testing is over with, right after the testing is over with, first of all, if you've got the sense to ask him for what the trick is to end the date of your testing, then right before the end date, God always gives you a word. He'll always tell you, okay, this is your next step. Okay. That's the only time you're going to hear God. Usually during the test, it's like crickets. You don't hear a lot, and you're just charged to forge on by faith. You're having to walk by faith and not by sight. That's the part of the faith building process, right? It's how God builds faith in you. And so now we're at that place as a body of believers where God has given us the word for 2020, and we're stepping into the new place, the new land, to build new legacy because we've chosen to get free. Okay. So the victories that Abraham had, despite the fact that he got a broken heart from his brother, because his brother chose to do his own thing for a while, and they kind of parted. But Abraham eventually attained victory over Lot, or over the flesh. And where men of faith are called to be a blessing, as was Abraham. So he did what he did and let Lot take whatever portion of land he wanted to have. He's like, here, man, I don't want to argue with you. That's a heart of love. It's like, I don't want to argue with you. I just want to be about my Father's business, and I want to serve Christ because that's what I do. That's what I love to do. I love to see lives transformed. And so Abraham was like that. That's what love does. And that was his first victory. But Lot wasn't a very dedicated believer, as Abraham was. But Abraham was going to help him anyway later on. We're going to find that out as we move on through the story. Because that's what love does too. It helps people when they get into a mess or into a problem or into an issue, or when they get captured. Now, a lot of us, I'm talking about families getting free right now in this season. A lot of us who kept forging ahead in kingdom, and I knew this in my spirit when I was going through it too, by the way, as a leader. I knew that eventually, even though God had separated me from my family at that point, because we weren't on the same page and rather to argue and bicker with people, I'd rather just keep focused on God, and I'll just do my own thing. You do your own thing, and we'll just call it a day, kind of a thing. But I knew eventually that they were going to need what God had shown me. And that's the same for each one of you. Your families are going to need what God has shown you. And we're entering into that phase right now. This is going to be a year of heavy witchcraft. Things aren't going to go really well for people if you're in the flesh. That's why God has been so diligent about working on your heart and getting you free from all this mess. That's why he's been so focused on getting us free. So for those who have been faithful to do and to obey the Lord, we're starting to see the breakthroughs. We're already starting with, it started in 2019, at the end of 2019. And that was, I want to say, fruit of the obedience of, of us walking in deliverance ministry and things like that. That's part of the fruit of that, and walking into your new place. That was a sign to keep us moving forward. So that was one of Abraham's victories. He got victory over his own flesh. He got victory over Lot. And he also got victory over the kings around him in the land that he was charging through. Pardon me. And the one thing people need to understand in this hour is that God isn't about numbers. He's not about numbers. He's about quality. He's all about the heart. He's about relationship. He's about love. He's about us keeping his ways. He's about us emulating him. Okay. So he's not about the big platform, the big amount of people listening, the big business, the big, whatever your big dream is. It's not about the size of a thing. It's about the quality of it in this hour. Is it built on the rock? Is it built on love? Because only the Lord builds a house, and all those that build theirs alone labor in vain. And so if you're about your dream and about making your plan your way, it's going to be built on the sand. So you've got to let the Lord build it. And it may not look like you think it was going to look like. And it usually always ends up like that. So you can't find yourself or let yourself get into disappointment over it because of it not coming out or looking like the way you thought it would look like, or the people coming back into your life the way that you thought they would come back into your life and act the way you thought they would do, or come back and apologize the way you thought they should. It just doesn't work like that. If they never apologize, if you never have the house that looks exactly like you thought it was going to look like, God's going to give you something better. It's going to be bigger and better. It'll be so much stronger if God does it, if you let God do it his way. But he's not about the size. He's not about numbers. He's about quality. He's about the heart. And so this is what gave Abraham the victory over these kings, is because he knew he had a relationship with his God. He knew his God would back him no matter what. And he knew he wasn't in a position to feel threatened. And so he just stepped under the wing of God, and he let God fight his battles with these kings. So at the end of this, though, the difference between these kings was that one was the king of Salem. And I want to say the other one, I want to make sure I've got this right. The other one was, I don't know, it's another king. There's two kings. One had, let me just say it like this. One had good motives and the other one had bad motives. Okay. One brought him a blessing and the other one tried to bring him a bargain from the devil. Okay. Does that make sense? We've differentiated the two kings now. So the Lord says in this hour, we need to be very, very careful as you're entering into your new land to watch out for the devil's bargains. There are no shortcuts to anything in life. There are none. It's a lot of building a ministry, building a dream, building the blessing, the prophetic word that God has been having you decree takes time. It takes time. It's an unfolding process. It's something that we step into that we've been learning the last, I want to say, for me, I've been learning it for 32 years, but for many of you, a lot of the body's just stepping into it. But it's a building process. And so in that new place you're stepping into, beware. The Lord says the enemy's going to come in with angels of light. And we're already experiencing that right now because the enemy knows where the Lord is taking many of you this year. He knows. And so he's already sitting in his false prophets. He's sitting in false apostles, false teachers, false preachers. They're all rising up. Patricia King is prophesying about it. Dr. Chuck Pierce is prophesying about it. Marcus Rogers is prophesying. Dr. Mark Sharon is prophesying. All the prophets are speaking. Doug Addison, they're all saying the same thing. So God's not, it's not like he's not telling us, okay? If we're listening, taking notes, paying attention, praying for discernment, we'll get the victory. So anyway, fast forward. So we're moving into this new place. And Abraham went back and he heard that his family had been taken captive. Fast forward to this. So Abraham heard that Lot, his old brother Lot, had been taken captive And he arrived 318. He took his 318 trained servants with him who were born in his own house. They were born of the same spirit, and they went in pursuit of Lot. And now check this out. Lot was captured by the tribe of Dan. Dan is another warring tribe. They're all tribes of Israel, right? So we're in a season right now where our families have been taken captive by the enemy. Some of them are locked into Jezebel, Leviathan, Ahab, Python. You label the demon. There are so many I can't even count. And they haven't gotten free, but you were the gatekeeper. You were the front runner chosen by the Lord for your generation to help start the process of freedom for your bloodline. Joseph, you went into captivity first. Now God's brought you out of captivity. Oh my God, the anointing on my vessel right now just hit me hard. So we're in a season now that God is dealing and healing our family members. And it's hard because God is also making us deal with the deep hurt they caused us, like he did Joseph. Joseph had to deal with his heart. I don't think Joseph was really, really happy, even though he saw his brothers come into the castle in Egypt and try to get grain from him. I don't think his heart was just overwhelmed and overjoyed right at the beginning. He tested him. He kind of set him up because he wanted to know if they would really change. Are they going to come back into his life and try to enslave him again with all their debunk? So God is putting us in the same position right now. He's making us come into this place with an open heart to allow people around us to change and be changed. And that's what I heard too during the conferences last weekend. Hopefully you caught Chuck Pierce's conference, but they were also talking about making sure your heart is open as God brings these people back and not shutting our hearts off from the different things that God allowed us to go through as front runners to help set the captives free in our bloodline. Okay. So we're in a season now that God is dealing and healing our family members, and God is getting the strife out of the camp to where our family units of front runners can reclaim their gifts of love. You have a gift. Some have a gift of joy, some have the gift of faith. Very few have the gift of love from birth. That's the presence. We saw that and experienced that in the conference this weekend when we saw that speaker get up there. His name is McInnes, where he carries the main gift on his vessel is the presence of God. That's a gift of love. That's the gift of love from birth. So God strategically sends in the gift of love into these atmospheres to help unload mantles and help unload and release mantles and anointings into these specific atmospheres. That's what God was doing for you. But your family also has a gift on it. Okay. And if the enemy can recognize that gift by seeing the pattern in your bloodline for generations, then he'll attack you. He'll attack the generations prior to you so that nobody can come into fullness. He strategically does that to hinder destiny. And so God says, I've lifted you up for such a time as this so that you could enter in, so that the destiny of all the generations prior would come into fullness. They would receive, because they tried. They did the best with the tools they had to work with. And then obviously everybody has a lifespan and their time expired. But now you're being used. Hi, Joyce. It's great to see you. It's great to see everybody today. I'm so glad to see everybody. Happy New Year. So, but God's main focus in this hour is getting the strife out of the camp to where our family units of front runners can reclaim our gifts of love. This is what the enemy was after to begin with, because where love abounds, where people dwell together in unity or in love, God is there. So the enemy was out to separate the family unit gift of love, the presence of God on our families. How many of you come from families that are deeply loving, or at one time they were deeply loving and you were close and you'd get each other's back, and better not be anybody come at your family, because if they came at you, they were coming at the whole tribe, the whole clan. And then all of a sudden the enemy got in there and just all these people started acting crazy and acting out of character. And you're like, what is wrong with these people? Why are they acting? This is like 30 years ago. And as God made us go on, and we had to leave that then behind, he made us step into our new place while he let this kind of sit on the back burner over here. And that's what we're coming out of. He's bringing it back together now. But now's the time that God's bringing it into that destructive assignment to give us victory over it. over the spirit of Lot. I'm going to call it that, over the spirit of the flesh, where our families were drawn away by the world as we continued on in our pursuit of kingdom. It's hard to walk alone in the kingdom, but when God gives you a mandate, he expects you to carry it out so that his kingdom can come, his will can be done on earth as it is in heaven. And the time has come where God is bringing an end to the spirit of religion, Jezebel, witchcraft, and its rule over the front runners, to where our hubs of love, our hubs of power are being restored. Our hubs of love, our ability, and this is the key, our ability to be loved. How many of you have been just wanting to be loved for the last 30 years? I just want to be loved. How many of you said that? Lord, all I want is just to be loved. I want to feel loved in this family. I want to feel loved wherever that statement took you, wherever that took you. How many have thought that? I've heard it so much around me. I've even felt it. I've felt it, and I've even conveyed it to some people in my family. But that's what God is bringing back. He's bringing back the ability to be loved, the ability, instead of having to find other outlets like the world is doing, where they're finding the little G's to fill those voids in their life. They're going and they'll get an animal, or they'll get somebody that's just kind of there, but somebody lets them be and loves them, flaws and all. That's what love does to a heart. And a heart that's empty and running on empty, or running low on love, it's hard to function. It's hard to win. It's hard to be blessed. Uh-oh, we're getting into some truths over here. Okay, so love is like a fuel then. That's what we're talking about. Love is like fuel to us. And so if you will, it enables you to keep going in times of hardship. But the Lord allowed the enemy to come in our ability to be loved, to test front runner, to test your heart, to see if you would really love him. If we would really love him, when everything that we counted on for support gave way, it went away. It was pulled out from underneath us. It was yanked out of our grasp. Right when we would have something seemingly that came in that we were counting on that wasn't God, God would just rip it out, every single thing. And so the test showed us, there were two keys that the test really, really showed us in that hour, I believe. The Lord showed me today, the test showed us who we were relying on instead of God. It made us turn inward to the Lord within us, where we should have always been to begin with, to rebuild the broken temple. And now our temples have been rebuilt. So God's focusing on rebuilding the family temple, so that the gifts placed on each of our family units will allow us all to dwell together in unity again through love. And so the same is true here. As Abraham took off to go get his brother, because that's what love does. It shows up in a time of need where everybody thinks all is lost. How many of your families have just kind of given up on you? I know mine has. Well, they try, but and God is still working there. And that's what it got my attention 2 weeks ago. And the Lord had me start prophesying that God's bringing the families in now. And I thought, oh my Lord, I can't believe you just had me say that with all this mess going on. And then he confirmed it. He's been confirming it in little ways. And now this is the biggest confirmation I've received today about God bringing families in, bringing families back into love, where you won't have to go. And don't take this wrong. They're not your families are not your only source of love. Everybody needs to be loved and feel like they belong somewhere. I believe that. But God's main focus, I believe, in separating you, first of all, was to teach you how to love yourself through him. And then to teach you how to receive love from him. To know that you were genuinely loved for who you are, flaws and all. Flaws and all. How many of you found that out in the last 6 months, maybe? You've been learning these life lessons? I have. I don't think any of the leaders, I think if all the leaders would be honest, they would probably attest to that too. We've all been going through the same testings. We're all, if you're a front runner, you're all, most of all at the same place, going through the same type of testing, same cat, different color. So fast forward, Abraham wins. Abraham gets Lot back. He gets his brother back. He's helping him. And the king Melchizedek, the king of Salem, that was the other king I was trying to think of, brought out bread and wine. He was celebrating with Abraham. He was celebrating the Lord Most High. And he was blessing Abraham. And he said, "Blessed be Abraham of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Lord Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And so he's giving God the glory with Abraham in this moment as his family has been reuniting with him. He's giving him the glory. He's saying only God could have done this. Only God could have done this, which should make us think about one thing. And this is my personal opinion on this, but I really, really believe this, is that when we recognize God's hand in a situation, we need to stop taking things so personally in that moment. And it wasn't anything personal against us when these people started acting crazy train. It wasn't anything personal when our families acted out of character. It wasn't anything personal. It wasn't to say, "I don't love you." It was to say, "I don't know what's happening." And I've sensed that by the Spirit several times over the last 20, 30 years, thinking, this is so crazy. This is so out of character for these people. And because I would see their heart and I would see the love in them operating in different aspects when they were under the spirit of love. Pardon me. And yet when the enemy would show up, it was just so over the top crazy. But in this moment, when God gave me that revelation, which I really, really sense that he's showing a lot of us in this moment now, because we're at that pinnacle, we're at that crossroad where we're entering in now, pardon me, where we're starting to realize it was nothing personal. It was nothing personal. It was a test. It was to set everybody free. God is no respecter of persons. What he does for one, he does for all. So God allowed the lots of our lives to move to the left and pursue their flesh as he moved us higher into kingdom. And they watched from the sidelines. They argued from the sidelines. They debated doctrine from the sidelines. All the while, God kept growing us. And so as many of these units might look small, again, God's saying they are mighty in God because of their pureness of heart. God said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." So as people begin to attack you over the years and in the current place and space with witchcraft that you're currently standing in, the enemy's main focus was to tear the house down, obviously. And so, however, with a heart of love, a gift of love, the presence of Christ on a vessel, all you needed was Jesus the entire time. Abraham knew that. He knew that. He was like, "I've only got 300 men. You've got 30,000. But there are more that are for me than are against me." He knew who he was. He knew who he was and who he was, whose he was and who he was. He knew whose he was and who he was. And so he wasn't all caught up in looking at all the numbers like Gideon. Remember when God had to open up Gideon's eyes? He said, hey, Slick, let me pray and open your eyes up, because you don't see all the angels surrounding us. There are more that are for you than are against you. And so when you know that, you stop walking on eggshells around these people and their stuff, and you start letting love rule and reign. Pardon me. Because you know that you're okay with God. You know who you are and whose you are. And you're not, this is a new place God's got us into this season too. We're not letting people's, their insecurities rule and reign over us. It's not my job to make you feel okay about yourself. It's your job. It's your job to get free in the Lord and to get deliverance so that you know who you are and whose you are. I can't get you there. I can pray for you. I can take you through deliverance, but I can't make you make the choice to step out into that new place, in that new area of your heart, to let God rule and reign in that area of your heart. Okay. Nor can you do that for another person. So we're learning in this season how to walk in peace when we get around these people, how to love these people despite themselves. That's what we want, right? You reap what you sow. So when you're learning to love other people and their weaknesses, you're starting to reap it, and it's becoming a cycle. It's becoming a reciprocal, and it's becoming, what do you say? It's like I forget what you call that. It becomes like a synergy. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you, Lord. It becomes a synergy in your life, and that's where love starts getting powerful. Very, very powerful. So to think, if you think about this the whole time, We'd gotten so caught up in so many other little G's of the world, like Lot did, thinking they could fight our battles in the times past. But during these battles, the enemy took everything that some people had, because those things were so worldly and fleshly, and made people so corrupt, and made us think that this is all I need in life. I don't need God anymore. That's the problem with the world right now. They're thinking, I don't need God. God's not relevant for this time, because they think the stuff is what's relevant, that the stuff that's going to fight their battles until it's all taken away. And so we placed our trust in the wrong things and in the wrong people, some of the wrong people, instead of God. But God. And I thank God for this today, because this answered so many questions for me today. As we're talking about Abraham and Lot and their relationship, and then the Lord starts moving over into surgery. He's talking about the heart surgeons. Remember, he's raising up heart surgeons in this hour. Thank you, Lord. We're peaking in about 35 minutes. I got to wrap this up. But I've got about probably 15 more minutes, 10 minutes. We may go over. We usually do. But what is God talking about here? It's based on Matthew 5:27-48. And it's talking about the promise, about the law of and the law of Moses. Tried to do research on that, and I had to ask the Lord, what was the purpose of the law of Moses? Because a lot of people are learning about the courts of heaven right now. They're learning how to walk and how to rule and reign in the courts of heaven. And we're learning how to operate in there against the devil, right? So what do these two things mean? Well, the law of love is the Spirit of God. It's the presence of Christ on your vessel, right? The law of Moses was about promises, keeping your promises, keeping covenant, keeping your word, letting your yes mean yes and your no mean no, keeping God's ways, not walking and doing what's right in your own eyes, keeping God's ways, even when it's freaking hard, even when people are blasting you in false accusation, or even when people are praying word cursings or speaking word cursings against you, or even when people are doing witchcraft prayers against you because of their lack of understanding. The level of the low level of God that they're operating in is what I want to say. We move from faith to faith and glory to glory. So eventually, because what the Lord wants us to be able to differentiate and to be able to see in this hour is and we're still back in Lot and Abraham, but while Lot was out there chasing rainbows or the worldly systems, you were being torn apart at the seams for God, so that he could see if you'd still be faithful while he ripped the other gods from your grasp. So these little G's that you had placed before him pushed you right back to him, believe it or not. So now God is having us tested. Well, we're coming out of testing actually, but he's already done surgery on our hearts. And now we're being sent back in as heart surgeons into our families. And this is where it comes in with Abraham, like any good brother does. God's sending us all back because he knew our family members would need us in this time, in this year ahead, because of all the witchcraft coming in. So a lot of your family members pushed you away, people that have just tossed you to the curb and said, you're not of God, or you're just a pain in the rear. You're too weird to deal with, or whatever the is. God's bringing it back. He's bringing it back because the impending witchcraft that's coming is going to need a deliverance minister to help them battle it. And you're that person, believe it or not. You're that person. You're going to have to know how to, hey, Randy, how are you today? Good to see you, man. Happy New Year's. So we're that man. We're that woman. And we're going to be leading them through deliverance from Jezebel, Ahab, verbal and emotional abuse, witchcraft, and religion. It's of tearing down the enemy structures that have tried to attach itself to our bloodlines for years. God's detaching the enemy structures. He's shattering the enemy structure, spirit of Samson on you. And he's just shattering them with the jaw. God can use an ass if he wants to. Okay. I won't go any farther into the conversation. That just sounded really berating. I'm sorry. So he uses me, right? So I'm a truth prophet. So sometimes people think that about truth prophets. They're like, I can't believe you just said that like that. And it's like, I just came out of my spirit like that. God bless you. Okay, I'm off to the next assignment. So here we go. So, okay, so when Abraham heard that his brother Lot was captured, he argued about that, took him, fought the got back. He took back what belonged to him. He took it back. He wasn't bullied anymore. That's the word of the hour for the prophetic word coming for 2020. He demanded not to be bullied anymore. He goes, you're not going to take my family. You're not going to take what's mine. You're not going to take my destiny. You're not going to take anything, because God says, greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. And so whatever spirit you're operating, God's fixing to deal with you, and I'm fixing to let him. That's what he's saying at the end of this. So he's talking about the law of love with the law of Moses, keeping promises, but also that God is a promise keeper. God is a God that can't lie. God says, I finish what I start. And so what he's saying here, he's talking about the people out there that operate in the law of the flesh, that are still operating in the spirit of Lot and saying, you've heard what it says, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But the Lord is saying this, I'm telling you now, resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other one to him also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak. You're learning to operate in the law of Moses, in the promise. You're learning to operate in God's character, the law of love. You're keeping God's, and they're prophesying in this year that it's going to become so easy to operate in love because of the extra measure of God's spirit that's already started drawing closer. Like about a month ago, if you've been tired this whole last month, have any of you just came out of this exhausted, spent, not one more thing to give, and you're just like, I don't have anything, no energy left. They're saying by the end of January, mid-February, you're going to get all of your strength. So just hang in there. Don't quit you. He's taking you somewhere. He's bringing it all back. And so the problem right now, we're going to go into this. The body of Christ at present is that so many captive to the flesh. What these people do, and they act on whatever when they much damage in their atmospheres. They don't like correction. They're easily offended, and they're very misled and deceived by Leviathan, who twists the truth in midair, causing them to get caught up in the world system and all the little G's. That's what got them there to begin with. So if you continue doing what's right in your own eyes, you're going to get your rear end tore up in 2020, because God's not dealing with it anymore. Because the Spirit is here. The Spirit of love is here. And where love is here, love is king. Whenever a king decrees a thing, it's done. Daniel 6:8. He keeps his word. He keeps his promises. He's able to keep that, which I've entrusted to him until that day. That means my life. That means my wealth, my health, my family. And when God makes a promise, the gifts of God are irrevocable, even though the vessel may be using or abusing the gifts by an unholy speaking spirit. What spirit are you operating in? Your flesh, the devil, or the Lord of love? The love of God. What spirit are you allowing to flow through your vessel? Are you choosing to get free? It's all up to you, man. It's all up to you. But this is all part of your new beginnings as the Lord gives you your new land, Abraham. That's what I just saying. You're exhausted because of witchcraft. You're exhausted partially. Well, it's half witchcraft. It's actually the other half is the weighty presence of God coming down on your vessel slowly, starting at the beginning of December. Everybody thought it was such a strange December. It didn't feel like Christmas. But God was giving you the best gift he could ever give to you. The gift of himself. He did it on the cross. He did it in the manger. And then he did it again on the cross. And now he's doing it again. He's bringing back his presence to hover and brood over the vessels of God, the true frontrunners, the true bride of Christ, which is where the enemy strategically hammered. And because the enemy, let me back up and say this too. If you don't know this, the enemy used to be the lead strategist around the throne of God before he was cast out of heaven. Okay, so if he was the lead strategist, he guarded the throne, he guarded the ark, he guarded the ark of the glory. So if he guarded the ark and he guarded the throne, he was having access to the courts, he was having access to God's word 24/7, every day, all day. So if he was a strategist, and he still is a strategist, he knew what it would take to force God's spirit off a vessel, to force God's spirit to draw back, which is sin. So the presence of God in December started coming down slowly again because we've chosen to cleanse our bloodlines. We've chosen to get deliverance. We've chosen to get free. He's bringing it all back. Hence the new land. This is part of your new holy altar. The new land is your new legacy. So as God is measuring people by their level of love, we're no longer living in the flesh as our forefathers did. We're called to a higher measure of living in the spirit of love, forgiveness, and letting God handle our affairs and battles. It's trusting in the Lord to know that he's big enough to fight your battles. How many of you stepped into a new place already where God's been trying to build up a new dream in you? And it's been delay or obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle like the last 8 to 9 months. And that's because we've been being taught by the Lord how to let God fight our battles. How many of you have seen God take care of you? God never leaves us nor forsakes us. So the last 7, 8, or 9 months, however long it's been going on in your life, how many of you have come to this place where you're starting to realize maybe I can trust the Lord in my life? Maybe he really does protect me. Maybe he's in this thing. Wow. What changed? See how fast it crept up on you? You didn't even know it. That's the goodness of a loving God. That is the goodness of a loving God. So wrapping this up today, because we're peaking at about 46 minutes, and I don't want to lose you guys by cramming you so full of the word. But the Lord is saying, don't get into revenge. Revenge is of the flesh. That's why he's telling us, don't fight your own battles. Give it to me. Bless those who curse you. Bless those who use you. Bless those who persecute you. Bless them with the love of the Lord of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Pull yourself out of the equation. And you let God make up his mind what he wants to do with those people. Because if they choose to stay, which is where God is taking us in this conversation, if they choose to stay in that spirit of the flesh, they're going to end up reaping what they've sown. And he's saying that in this hour, he's saying that, I'm going to read it to you, what he's saying as we wrap up. And I was actually shocked to read it. But the Lord is saying, let me write this up. Let me see where I wrote this down. Okay. Many are weary. Let me see, pulling up with the text. Growing up in pain. He's talking about that. I'm not being able to cover everything I wanted to cover because of running out of time. I'll just read it from here. This is what he's saying. It's based on Proverbs 1:29 through 33. This is what the Lord's saying for those who continue to rebuke and to refute godly knowledge or refute the fear of the Lord. He's saying, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, they would have none of my wisdom's, they would have none of my counsel or wisdom's counsel. They despised my every rebuke. Love will correct you. You've got to remember that. It'll hold you accountable. Because love is all about getting you free and making you into its image. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the fullness with their own fancies. For the turning away of the simple will slay them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil. I didn't get to cover the whole word. I had about 5 pages, and so maybe I'll finish it up on Friday. But God, he was giving me so much prophetic insight today. I just kept writing and writing and writing. But are you encouraged today? Are you encouraged? I am so encouraged. I'm stoked. I'm ready. It answered a lot of my questions and gave me a lot of joy, actually. Because I like to share things, actually. I don't want to go somewhere. I don't want to go to heaven if I can't take people with me. Especially, I don't want to ever leave anybody out or make anybody feel like, if I'm finding something good about God and he's giving me all this revelation, I don't want to leave anybody out. I want to share it with everybody. And it's the same way I feel about, this new place and where we're walking. I want my family to be with me too. And I know you feel the same way. That's what God is doing in this hour. He's no respecter of persons. He didn't forget about them. He couldn't forget about them. He loves them too much. And by the way, Kara Cost, I want to point you out. Your Lord's been talking to me about your spouse. The Lord is dealing with his heart. And the Lord has been talking to me the last 3 days about it. And he said that he is setting him free of regret. He's setting him free of, unworthiness. He's also setting him free of self-rejection, where he just piles up upon himself all these things. And, oh, I didn't do this right and I didn't do that right. No, I screwed this up and I messed up my destiny. And the Lord's like, no, you didn't. You haven't messed up anything. I'm fixing to take you right into it, full tilt boogie and just full headstrong. God's taking him into it. So he's going back into ministry. So I just want you to know that because the Lord's been talking about him and I've been praying about him. And a few other people who come up on here. So if you're on here, you want to join us on here because God shows me stuff about you and I love to be a blessing to you. So with that, I want to thank you for listening to the 15-minute Rev today, guys. We're wrapping it up. I hope you have a blessed week. Make sure you join us. Well, you can't join us tonight. Actually, it's for our team. But make sure you join us on Friday when we have our next 15-minute Rev. We come around probably about 1-ish. I try to get on about 1 or 2-ish. But I hope you join us. And I hope you have a very, very wonderful year. Happy New Year. I'm glad you joined me today. And I'm glad to see some of you live. I'll be back. See you soon. Love you guys. Bye-bye.